Hello everybody, welcome to Sunday Storytime. My name is Margo and today we're going to be reading books without a theme. As you may have seen from talking faster than my brain is working. As you might have seen from the description, this is actually going to be my last Sunday Storytime and the last Sunday Storytime at all. Nobody's going to replace me for this story time. Cool news is that I'm going to be one of the new teen librarians, but unfortunately that means that I won't be able to come and do story time with you as often. You'll probably see me at some points around the library, and maybe I'll sub in for a story time at some point. But yeah, this is going to be the end of Sunday story time for me. So to celebrate, I decided to pick two of my favorite books from when I was a kid, and one book that I found today that I think is just fun to share. So without further ado, let's go ahead and just jump in. So this book is very special to me. It's one that I grew up with and that my parents would read to me when I was little. It's called No Jumping on the Bed by Ted Arnold. Now when I was little, this book had different illustrations, and if you recognize this illustration style, Ted Arnold is the person who writes the Fly Guy books. And his art used to look a little bit different. So this is a little bit different version of the book that I grew up with, but I still love it a lot. This book's also important to me because it's the book I read when I interviewed for this job. So I thought it would be the perfect one to end on. So without further ado, let's get started. In his room near the top floor of a tall apartment building, Walter was getting ready for bed. His father said, "If I've told you once, I've told you 1,000,000 times, no jumping on the bed. One day it's going to crash right through the floor. Now lie down and get some sleep." Walter plopped down on his pillow, squeezed his eyes closed. "Good night," said his father. He turned off the light and pulled the door almost shut. The room was dark and quiet, except for a soft thump, 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 coming from the room above. "That's Delbert upstairs," thought Walter. He switched on his lamp. If Delbert can jump on his bed, then so can I. Walter jumped higher and higher until his hair brushed the ceiling. When he landed, the mattress creaked, the floor cracked, and his whole bed tipped up sideways. Then down through the floor fell Walter, the bed, and all. Walter's bedroom was directly above Miss Hattie's dining room. She was quite surprised when Walter landed in her spaghetti and meatballs. "I was not expecting company for dinner," she said through a mouthful of meatballs. Said Walter. "Spaghetti is my favorite." But he didn't have a chance to eat. His bed smashed through the table and kept right on crashing through the floor. Down and down fell Walter, Miss Hattie, the spaghetti, the bed, and all. Walter's Aunt Batty had just moved in. She was still unpacking when I skipped a page. There we go. Mr. Matty didn't even notice a bed coming through his ceiling until a meatball bounced off of his head. Miss Hattie landed in his lap. Walter splashed into his aquarium. "I already had one bath tonight," said Walter. He wanted to watch the monsters on TV, but his bed crunched through the floor and took the TV with it. Down and down fell Walter, Miss Hattie, Mr. Matty, the TV, the spaghetti, the bed, and all. There we go. Walter's Aunt Batty had just moved in. She was still unpacking when Miss Hattie, Mr. Matty, and a dripping wet Walter tumbled through the ceiling and right into the box holding her stamp collection. Walter burst through the bottom of the box and down through the floor. Aunt Batty soon followed. Down and down fell Walter, Miss Hattie, Mr. Matty, Aunt Batty, the stamps, the TV, the spaghetti, the bed, and all. Patty and Natty had worked for days, building a house of blocks. Afraid that Fatty Cat might knock it over, they shooed her out. Then the upstairs neighbors came through the ceiling. "Excuse us," said Walter. "We won't be staying long." And then his bed crashed through the floor. Down and down fell Walter, Miss Hattie, Mr. Matty, Aunt Batty, Patty, Natty, Fatty Cat, the blocks, the stamps, the TV, the spaghetti, the bed, and all. The last thing Mr. Hanratty expected to see was a bed coming through his studio ceiling, followed by nearly everyone in the building. "If I knew you wanted to see my paintings," he said, "I would have tidied up a bit." Then his floor caved in, and everyone followed Walter's bed down through the hole. Down and down fell Walter, Miss Hattie, Mr. Matty, Aunt Batty, Patty, Natty, Fatty Cat, Mr. Hanratty, cans of paint, the blocks, the stamps, the TV, the spaghetti, the bed, and all. Maestro Ferlingatti and his string quartet were astonished by the colorful crowd that dropped in unannounced. "I love an audience," he said, but when paint splattered everywhere, the maestro wished his audience would leave. And they did, taking his string quartet with them. The maestro's floor was also the basement ceiling. It was dark as midnight down there. Walter squeezed his eyes closed and fell through the darkness until he landed on something soft. He opened his eyes. Everything was in its place, and outside the door his mother and father were talking quietly. "Whew, no more jumping on the bed for me," said Walter, as he lay back down to sleep. Then, suddenly he heard a creak. The ceiling cracked, and down came Delbert. Down and down fell Delbert. So that was No Jumping on the Bed by Ted Arnold, one of my favorites. Now, in between our books, let's get our Wiggles out. This is one that I did a lot growing up, so it's one that I've decided to choose. We're going to do Open Shut Them. And I think everybody does Open Shut Them a little bit differently, but this is the version that I know the best. So we're going to go like this. Open, shut them, give a little clap, clap, clap. Open, shut them, put them in your lap, lap, lap. Creep 'em up to your chin, open your mouth, but don't put them in. Open, shut them, give a little clap, clap, clap. Open, shut them, put them in your lap, lap, lap. I bet y'all at home followed along. Great. So, another one of my childhood favorites is Sheila Ray the Brave by Kevin Hankiss. Kevin Hankiss has written Sheila Ray the Brave, Wemberly Worried, just a whole bunch of my personal favorites. And so I'm excited to share this one with you today. She was a character that I think I identified a lot with as a kid. And I think she's wonderful. I think this book is wonderful. Sheila Ray wasn't afraid of anything. She wasn't afraid of the dark. She wasn't afraid of thunder and lightning, and she wasn't afraid of the big black dog at the end of the block. At dinner, Sheila Ray made believe that the cherries in her fruit cocktail were the eyes of dead bears. She ate 5 of them. At school, Sheila Ray giggled when the principal walked by. When her classmate Wendell stole her jump rope during recess, Sheila Ray tied him up until the bell rang. "I am very brave," Sheila Ray said, patting herself on the back. Sheila Ray stepped on every crack in the sidewalk. I started to stomp like I'm stepping on every crack, and then I realized none of you could see that, so it looked a little bit silly. When her sister Louise said there was a monster in the closet, Sheila Ray attacked it. She rode her bicycle no-handed with her eyes closed. Yeah, Sheila Ray, her friends yelled, clapping their hands. One day, Sheila Ray decided to walk home from school a new way. Louise was afraid to. "You're too brave for me," said Louise. "You're always such a scaredy cat," Sheila Ray called. "I am not," whispered Louise. Sheila Ray started off skipping. "I am brave, I am fearless," and she stepped on every crack. She walked backwards with her eyes closed. She growled at stray dogs. She bared her teeth at stray cats. She pretended that The trees were evil creatures, and she climbed up them and broke their fingers off. Snap, snap, snap. Sheila Ray walked and walked. She turned corners and crossed streets. It suddenly occurred to Sheila Ray that nothing looked familiar. Sheila Ray heard frightening noises. They sounded worse than thunder. She thought horrible thoughts. They were worse than anything she'd ever imagined. I am brave, Sheila Ray tried to convince herself. I am fearless. The sounds became more frightening. The thoughts more horrible. Sheila Ray sat down on a rock and cried. Help, she sniffed. She thought of her mother and father and Louise. Mother, father, Louise, she cried. Here I am, a voice said. Louise, Sheila Ray hugged her sister. We're lost, Sheila Ray said. No, we're not, said Louise. I know the way home. Follow me. Louise stepped on every crack. She walked backwards with her eyes closed. She growled at stray dogs and bared her teeth at stray cats, which is actually not very nice. Don't do that, please. And she pretended that trees were evil creatures. She jumped up and broke their fingers off. Snap, snap, snap. Sheila Ray walked quietly behind her. They walked, and they crossed streets, and they turned corners. And soon their house could be seen between the trees. Sheila Ray grabbed Louise and dashed up the street. When they reached their very own yard, the gate was closed behind them. Sheila Ray said, Louise, you are brave. You are fearless. We both are, said Louise, and they walked backwards into the house with their eyes closed. The end. That was Sheila Ray the Brave by Kevin Hankiss. Now, before we do our last book for today, we're going to do a fun little rhyme. It's called 5 Plump Peas. You start out like this, and it goes a little something like this. 5 plump peas in a pea pod pressed. 1 grew, 2 grew, and so grew all the rest. They grew, and they grew, and they wouldn't stop. They grew, and they grew until they popped. Let's do that one more time. 5 plump peas in a pea pod pressed. 1 grew, 2 grew, and soon did all the rest. They grew, and they grew, and they didn't stop. They grew, and they grew until they popped. Our last book today is one that I hadn't seen before today, but I thought it was just lovely and charming. It's called Puppy in My Head, a book about mindfulness by Elise Gravel, or Gravel. I should have looked that up beforehand. So this is called Puppy in My Head. And it's a book about emotions and how to deal with them. There is a puppy in my head. His name is Ollie. Arf! Most of the time, Ollie is quiet. He sits or sleeps. He is a good puppy. Ollie is very curious. He wants to explore everything, smell everything, say hello to everybody, and go everywhere. That is how puppies learn. Sometimes Ollie is all over the place. He gets excited. Yip, yip. And then I get excited too. When he's happy, excited, it's fun. I feel like jumping around or dancing. But it's not fun when Ollie is too excited. That's when he runs around in my head and makes too much noise. He can't calm down. And I can't calm down either. Ollie, stop it! Sometimes he gets scared. He tries to warn me that there's danger. Most of the time the danger is not real. But then I get scared too. What is it, Ollie? Is there something that we should be afraid of? If I listened to him every time he got scared, I would be scared a lot. I try to tell him, stop, Ollie, sit down. But it doesn't always work. He needs help to calm down. It's not easy for a puppy. If he gets too excited, scared, or upset, he can't listen to me. His feelings control him. When that happens, I take out my magical leash. It's not a leash that you can see. It's invisible. The leash is my breath. I sit down and take a deep breath, long, slow, and gentle. Let's all take a deep breath together, friends, on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Then I breathe out very slowly. The sound of my breath calms Ollie, and he comes closer. I breathe in and out a few more times, as many times as it takes, but always slowly. Ollie follows my breath and comes to sit right next to me, and we cuddle. It's okay, Ollie. He's asleep. See? He just needs help. We're both feeling better now. There are other ways that I can help Ollie. When he gets too excited, he needs to use up his energy, and I take him for a walk or a run, or to chase a ball. Sometimes Ollie just needs to talk. I listen and try to understand what he's telling me. So what's bothering you, Ollie? And then I can talk about it to someone too. Ollie is upset because I had a fight with a friend. Mostly what Ollie needs is for me to pay attention and to spend more time with him. I'm here for you, buddy. I love Ollie. He's such a good puppy. And he is my best friend. Everybody has a puppy in their head, even grown-ups. Do you have one? What is your puppy's name? And I thought this book was just lovely because it's a good way to think about feelings and emotions and a way to be a little bit kinder to ourselves. Because if I imagine that all of my anxieties or the things I'm excited about or scared about are a puppy in my head, I'm going to be nicer to myself because, of course, you got to be nice to puppies. So that was my last book for today, friends. You'll definitely see me around in the library. I'm not going anywhere. I'm just not going to be doing Sunday Storytime anymore. Thank you all so much for watching and being here with me, and I will see you not next time, but just around. Bye, everybody!